Welcome back to another episode of Comes a Time. That's O'Teal.
And that's Mike.
We're both looking very crystal clear in our respective cameras.
I got to say, man, you know, the 2022 4K upgrade, you know, it looks
2 plus
good.
2 is 4K upgrade. Yep, we did it.
Good.
Yeah, we look all right. We had my buddy Jon Laster on the show today. Jon is a very funny comedian and an app. What would you call it? He's app developer, creator?
Yeah, app creator, really.
Entrepreneur. And we talked about his new app, Blap, which utilizes geolocation to locate and showcase and highlight Black-owned businesses. And Jon's been working his butt up. You go into the cellar, and it's like while he's doing shows, he's got his laptop open at the table, and he runs down, does his set, comes back up, hammering away, and it's taken off, and it's only in its infant stages, and it seems to be growing and growing. So thought it would be a good opportunity to chat with him and have him on. I thought you guys would hit it off.
Yeah, he's a great guest to have for Black History Month. And his story, his trajectory, it's so unusual. And I really love it because, you know, some people get to where they're going by just being very, like, on one path. And some people take a roundabout way. And it's just each thing kind of leads to the next thing. And it's just an unusual story. I don't even want to give it away. It's really fascinating just as an American story. And
American story is right, yeah.
And as an Afro-American story this month, it's a bullseye.
The app is fantastic, and it works incredibly well, and everybody should check it out. It's Blap, B-L-A-P-P, and you'll hear more about it during this episode with Jon, and we hope you're all doing well and staying safe out there, and we will catch you next time. Enjoy. 4K coming in. It's nice to see you outside of club, Jon. I think that's where you and I see each other the most, or on the street surrounding the cellar.
Yeah, it's like we live there.
Yeah, O'Teal. Before the pandemic, O'Teal came to see me do a long set at the Fat Black Pussycat, which I think you're doing tonight, right?
Tonight.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll be rocking an hour tonight. Well, you know, close to it. It's never really an hour, but whatever.
Where did you start out doing comedy? Or where are you from originally, I guess I should ask?
Man, I'm originally from Denver. I was a ball player, though. So high school All-American. They thought I was the next guy going to the NBA. And a lot of people suggested that I move to New York, said it'd be an easier path to the NBA. And I passed on that advice. But the funny part was I played against guys in high school that were from New York, these All-Americans, and just took them to the woodshed in games that we played in tournaments. And I mean, nice. I intentionally made a mockery of these guys. You know what I mean? I remember the coach coming over to us at the end of the game to my coach. I was standing there talking to my coach, and their coach came over. There's this famous team called Riverside Baptist Church. And I remember their coach coming over to our coach, and he looked at him, and, you know, they shook hands, and then he turned and looked at me, and he said, I threw everything I had at him. I emptied the bench trying to stop that dude. You know, he was like, yo, you got a ringer on your hands. And people told me, just move to New York. That way you'll be normally playing against these guys. You'll move up the rankings. You'll go to a school that's an easier path to the NBA. And I passed on that. So essentially I was a big fish in a little pond, and I knew I wasn't going to do that again with comedy. You know, you want to climb Mount Everest, you got to go to Mount Everest. You can't prove that you can climb Mount Everest from Denver.
New York. I always wish to God that the mecca of comedy. I wish we could take New York comedy and cut it out of New York and move it to a place where we can all have, like, you know, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house and acres of land where after the show we can go, hey, let's go hang out in my yard and cook on the grill and, you know, enjoy nature and shit. But nope.
Yeah. Instead, I moved to New York City and started bombing like a motherfucker.
What age were you when you moved to New York?
Oh, 22, 23. I was right out of college. So yeah, I just moved out here. And you got to figure, man, I was the captain of the basketball team at a Division I school. So you are, in a college town, you literally are the man. So to go from that to moving to New York City with one box where not one single person gives a rat's ass about you, and not only not doesn't give a fuck about you, but you're on stage bombing. So they less than give a fuck about you. You literally are an irritant.
Even the rats don't give a rat's ass
Even
about
the
you.
rats don't give a rat's ass. The rats in New York City will run right past you like, dude, you're not going to do nothing.
Yeah.
No, you're not going to do a damn thing to us. We were here before you.
I step aside for the rats.
Yeah, me
Full
too.
disclosure.
Yeah.
Me too. So yeah, it was moving here was very, very humbling to say the least. I remember being on a show with some good friends of mine, and people were doing good on the show. And sometimes it's just not your night, but this woman comes in and and I started on the hood circuit, very, so it's all black rooms. Black people can be your best friend or your worst enemy. If they love you, they'll give you a ride home and make you chicken. If they don't like you, they will let you know, hey man, this shit you trying to serve up ain't done. Put it back in the oven. So it's one of those nights, and this woman's got on this mink coat, I remember. And she comes in and she's talking loud to her friends at the table as soon as she walks in. So, I'm a new comedian. I was like, hey, lady, you talking crazy, calm down. There's a show up here. And oftentimes when people heckle us from the crowd, they'll say, hey, you're not funny, or come on, man, get to the joke. Something that you can throw something back, because we're used to that. So we're used to somebody saying something, they can throw something back. And I remember she's standing there talking to her friends, and she looked up at me and she said, fuck you, bitch. Yo,
Not much you can throw back at that.
I was a new comedian, right? So I was like, come on.
Come on. Give me a heckle I can work with here.
Throw a pitch somewhere near the plate, lady. Come on. She just took the ball. She just took the ball and threw it at my head with fire attached to it. She said, fuck you, bitch. Yeah. The place goes crazy, right?
Wow.
Some people are like, and some people are like, oh. And I was like, hey, yo,
And as a new comic, you're like, do I keep going or do I deal? And then you're like,
I wanted to say, lady, you got me. I am done for the night.
Done. You know which ones I've always had the hardest time with, John, is the apathetic ones where they're just like, go keep doing your thing. Like they're at the club because they're like they got dragged there by a group of people and they want nothing to do with it, and they're just like, go ahead and live your dream. I'm gonna text. And just that whole like I'd rather you hate me or have a opinion about something that I said than just this kind of like, you go on and do your thing. Because that one I'm just like, because that's what I'm telling myself, It's like, what am I doing up here? Those are always the hardest ones.
I've never been the fashionista. So I've never been the dress up guy on stage. And I remember one time I was doing a show down in Virginia Beach, and it's a big room. So there's 400 or 500 people. I used to, Leslie Jones was one of the first people to take me on the road. So Les was like, we're going down to Virginia Beach. I'm opening the show, and again, my dress is casual at best, because I didn't give a fuck. I've always been a sweatshirt, jeans, whatever type of boots. And I remember I get on stage and I said, hey, how y'all feeling? They still talking a little bit. And I said, come on, man. I came all the way down here from Brooklyn. How are y'all feeling? And there's this guy over in the corner, right? And I swear to God, this is what he yells out. He said, from the looks of them boots, it looked like you walked.
That sounds like a black club.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
They're all dressed nice to the gills. He said, from the looks of them boots, it looked like you walked. Yeah. Now, the crowd hadn't settled down yet, right? So luckily, no one heard him. There wasn't the effect because he's way over in the right corner, right? Now, I heard him. Now, I had learned from I had already learned from fuck you, bitch. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't have something good to come back with, you're in trouble. But they hadn't heard him. So I left that guy alone. But I remember after the show, I still remember his face, right? After the show, I said, yo, I heard what you said about my boots. I told him in the lobby, I was like, yo, man, that was a great one. He was like, oh, man, I'm sorry. Because after I said it, he said, after the show, he's like, I thought you were so funny that he felt bad. I said, no, that was a good one. I'm just glad no one heard it. Not enough, because if they would have heard that, they'd have been staring at my boots that whole 30 minutes.
Man, it's
so when you got to New York, how much comedy experience did you have? Were you like totally green?
So
no.
Like I came here, man, with a box, one box. I moved to my sister's because my sister lived here in New York. I put the box down in the chair and I sat down on the couch. I just started bawling. My sister had never seen me cry like that. You know, my sister, when we got to high school, my sister said, when you came to high school, you were Desiree's brother. When I left high school, I was John's sister. So my sister says, I know what you're capable of. So she had never seen me like that before. And she was like, oh, don't cry. I can buy you a ticket back home tomorrow. Don't worry about the money. And I told my sister, I said, I'm not crying because I want to go home. I'm crying because I'm never leaving. Under no circumstances am I going back to Denver, unless it's in a box, you know, if I'm dead.
Wow.
But I'm going to figure this out. You know, I'd had a college career that went south because I signed with the University of Minnesota, transferred back to Colorado State. But I had learned a lesson in that just stay the course. It takes a while. No matter how rocky it gets, you just got to hang in there. It's just like moving to a new town. It's just terrible at first. And then you could pack up and go back to the old town. But I wasn't going back. You know, I had learned that lesson about transferring from Minnesota back to Colorado State, and that really ended my basketball career. So I was like, I'm not going back to Denver. No matter how awful this gets for me, I'm gonna stick it out. But that's what I was crying about.
Yeah, you know, what's so funny is that like exactly opposite. Like moving to Denver terrified me. When I moved to Denver, it was like under the wrong pretenses. I was just like running from, you know, myself really. And I got there and it was just the perfect place to get lost in the shuffle. Like the Mountain West area reminds you of how small you are. Like in the city, you kind of have frames of reference. You got buildings, you got other people running into you, cars you got to avoid getting hit by. You could get lost in Colorado very easily. You could go walk into the woods and it's like, well, oops. Shit, it's just me and the mountain lions now, you know? And it's just terrifying somehow that, like, yeah, that new place. And growing up on the East Coast and, like, being used to that speed. And then you get out there and it's like everyone's kind of sort of polite, but also kind of just worried about them doing their own thing and very weird and different. And, you know, it was terrifying. And there were so many times, like, the first couple of weeks where I was just like, I don't belong here. I got to go home. New York's my place, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that move is just, it's no matter where you go, it's always terrifying. You're always wondering, like, but that's change in general, right? I mean, that's everything. Getting rid of we talked about it yesterday, just about like getting rid of those like comforts, those creature comforts, even if it's sometimes fear is the comfort, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's something to be said for like what you said before, John, just putting all your eggs in one basket. That's because that way, no matter where I end up, it's like there's only, you know, I know what road I'm on. I don't know where it's going to end up, but this is the road.
Yeah. I remember reading a story about, and I don't remember which one of them it was, but it was one of this army general, and, you know, he gets all his troops on shore, and then he tells a couple guys, go back and burn the ships. You know? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to die here.
That's
There
interesting.
will be no retreat. But that was my mindset when I got to New York. My mindset was, I'm burning the ships this time. There's not going to be no transfer. There's not going to be no maybe kind of. I'm going to die in New York City trying to pull off this comedy thing.
Which you're killing it, obviously. I mean, you're doing amazing. And you know, I want to talk about real quick the versatility because, like, you know, tonight you're doing an hour. 60 minute, 45, whatever.
Yeah.
We host, we open, we feature. I don't think a lot of people realize like the various different pitches we have to have in our repertoire. We're not just up there throwing fastballs constantly. Like to host is an art. To middle is an art. To do a long set and sustain for 45 minutes to an hour is an art. And I kind of wanted to chat with you a little bit about that. Like how will you go at tonight a little different than you go at when you're, let's say, hosting a show?
I mean, hosting a show is, I come from a basketball background. It's similar to being a point guard. My job as the point guard is to keep everybody hot, make sure everybody gets the best chance, everybody catches the ball in the right spot. You know what I mean? So if I'm hosting, I tell a joke about, this is a true story too. I remember one time I was in trouble financially and my ex-girlfriend happened to be white. She said, call your dad. And I was like, well, who the fuck? You know what I'm saying? Like, what black person do you say that to? Call your dad. She meant it too. Like that was a real solution for her. She was like, dude, call your dad. And I was so upset, right? People love that joke. But as a host, if I'm performing, I do that joke wherever I want to. If I'm hosting, I'm not going to do that before I'm bringing up a white woman. You know what I mean? You don't want people looking at them like that. Or if I'm telling some joke that's fucked up about women, I'm going to make sure I don't do that before I bring a woman up. Because I want to give them the best chance to, unless I know it's someone, or let's say, for example, if I'm hosting and I know someone that does dirty material, I don't want to do dirty material right before I bring that person up. You know what I mean? So I want to make sure as a host, I'm thinking as a point guard, how do I set this person up to make sure that they have the easiest path into laughter? Or if I'm hosting, I don't want to do just crowd work. I want to tell a joke so that the crowd gets into that premise setup punch that is playing in their ear, that rhythm of jokes is playing in their ear before they come up there. Because I've seen hosts just do crowd work and then somebody comes up and starts telling jokes and the crowd's like, oh, I thought you were going to talk to us.
Yeah.
So as a host, it's more of a point guard. If I'm performing like tonight, I think I'm in constant closer mode. You want every joke to be as good as your closer. Now, of course, they're not all going to be. You can only have one closing joke, but ideally they would all be so that people are like, man, that was crazy from start to finish.
Yeah, you almost kind of have to be a little bit empathetic when you're hosting, where it's like, what I realized after a while with hosting was like, and it took me a minute to realize this, but like some people are at their very first ever comedy show. Like some people are at a comedy club for the first time in their life and they don't know what the hell it is. They've seen it on TV where it's painted as this, like everything's perfect and every joke crushes and whatever. But like, they're not realizing that like, a waitress could drop a tray of drinks or someone can be pissed at some, or whatever, like someone's talking. So people get almost kind of like, you almost kind of have to like walk them through the experience a little bit.
Right.
Which I think after hosting a bunch makes your closing set way stronger because you're able to draw from that empathy, or almost kind of like you could tell a headliner that's hosted a bunch.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of good hosted or good comedians, but it's very difficult the other way around because most comedians are not good hosts. There's this many good comedians and there's this many good hosts. You know what I mean? It's a very different skill set. Yeah. There's a lot of people that can play basketball, very few who could play the point. The point requires a lot more thinking. You really are quarterbacking the whole thing. And if they don't like you, then they could hate the whole show.
Very true.
You could drag the whole show down. It's like, oh God, here comes this horrible guy back up here. They got us all in a bad mood. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like a slow pace car. Like this is going to be terrible.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Oteil.
Now I was going to ask, how did the pandemic treat you? How did you get through not being able to do live work? Do a number on your head?
Let me tell you something, Oteil. I was first of all, the pandemic kicked in, right? And a trillion podcasts popped up.
Like this
You're
one.
looking at one of them.
Let me tell you what. Let me tell you what the pandemic was. The pandemic was a podcast. Goddamn! Oh
Festival.
my God! It was the birth of the podcast era. If it wasn't kicking already. So there's a trillion podcasts. Here's the worst part about the podcast. Normally you get DMs or people call you and they say, "Hey, John, could you do my podcast?" Man, I'll let you know, man. I'm busy, whatever. During the pandemic, what were you going to say?
That's how
I
we
can't-
got most
I
of our
can't.
guests.
Yeah, you couldn't.
I got COVID. That was the only
you're-
thing.
We're on lockdown and you're like, "Oh, I can't do it." Dude, we've been locked down for 6 months. You fucking can do it. So I'm starting to do all these podcasts. And keep in mind, during the lockdown, everyone was doing lives every night.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were just doing lives. So I'm doing, like, all joking aside, probably 6 of these things a day, right? Just people hitting, "Hey, man, I'm a big fan. I know you don't know me, man, but I do a little live. I only need you on for 10 minutes if you could do that." And it's like, God damn it. I got 10 minutes for this person. But the crazy thing about that was, like I said, you got to do these things. Everyone asked the first question. Everyone asked the same first question. "Hey, John, you're one of the workingest comedians in the world, man. You work at the Cellar and you host a ton of shows. This must be terrible for you." And the sad part was, I was like, no. I am a solitary guy. Like, I cannot tell you the joy of laying around, wait a minute, without feeling guilty,
Yeah.
watching
Right.
documentaries all day. Dude, with no guilt and a check from the government. I mean, what part of #heaven was that?
You're anti-mask, not because of you don't believe in it. You just want the thing to go longer.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking.
Let's
When's the
keep
next
this
variant?
thing
I want to stay home.
Oh my God, yo, bro. People were like, "Yo, you must be in hell." I was like, just the opposite. Are you crazy? Do you know that they're sending me a check every week to sit at home and watch documentaries? Yeah, I'm here for it. And then, of course, I had this thing on my Instagram called the Jon Laster Challenge, which ended up being picked up by the New York Times and a ton of other media outlets, which was me and my friends. Because I had a friend say, "Oh my God, that George Floyd, watching George Floyd get killed like that she said that was the fuel for all of this uprising and people trying to be, way more responsible and pay attention to, the Black strife in America." And it just angered me, not because she didn't have good intention. It's just, it was just like, wow, like white people, a lot of white people, not all white people, but a lot of white people just don't get it. The fact that she thought this was the fuel. And I explained to her, I said, George Floyd wasn't the fuel, he was the match. The fuel is all of the other Black men that have had guns and guns and guns put to their head. All the other Black men who've been stopped by the police too many times to count. I said George Floyd was the match. The fuel is happening tonight. And I don't mean like theoretically tonight. I mean literally February 1st, 2022. There's some Black dude getting beat by the cops right now.
Yeah.
It's just not on camera. Just because we didn't see just because we got to watch someone that had the time because of the pandemic to stand there with her camera. Because normally we're always moving around. She still wouldn't have caught it if that was a normal day. We just happen to be in a time where there's not much going on and somebody had the patience to stand there the whole time. Because if that video had been broken up at all, I don't know that cop's in jail.
Yeah.
Meaning if somebody had recorded the beginning and someone had recorded the end, the cops would have said something crazy happened in the beginning. It was because we had a perfect view of what happened. But if you don't think that there's some Black dude getting choked by the cops today, February 1st, 2022, getting choked, you out of your damn mind. So I was trying to find a way to convey that. So I created the Jon Laster Challenge with me and some of my friends telling about our experiences with the cops. And then that, like I said, became a media circus. And then from that, I decided that I needed to do something. And that's why I created BLAP. I was like, I need to do something that's going to create lasting change. Because even those videos, they're powerful and they're going to stick in people's heads. But I didn't think it would create the lasting change that I've always desired in my heart.
Yeah. I can't wait we got to talk about BLAP. I think this is incredible. And it's something that, you know, it's one of those things where, and it's funny because you and I both have a similar premise about it, doing cocaine and then planning businesses that never happen. Doing coke and then going like, let's start a restaurant. Like you saw, and it cracks me up because it's just so true. But you had this. I'm so excited to know, like, from the birth of the thought to execution and getting it out and the development and all of that. Like, this app just, I took a break from social media for a little while for my mental health. I needed a breather from looking at everything. And like, then I start seeing BLAP popping up more and more. And I'm like, holy shit, this is fantastic. So like, how did it come to fruition? And like, where did you get the idea and things like that?
Well, the truth of the matter is I had an econ major in college with a emphasis in poverty. So I'd studied way back then about how marginalized societies get out of a marginalized position, meaning, you know, the Asian migration that came over when they were working on the railroads and, you know, smoking lots of hash, you know, in Chinatown and whatever. And then how did they work their way out of that situation? Because actually, I think now the Asian population in America has the highest median income. But that came from them spending with them. You got to find a way to recirculate that dollar. Jewish Americans came over. You got to find a way. Italian Americans came over. You got to find a way to recirculate that dollar. And Black people, same thing, came over. We were circulating the dollar. Black people, unfortunately, had instances like Tulsa, where once Black people our money started accumulating, that's where the Ku Klux Klan came from. It was about uppity niggers. You guys are getting it together, you're getting too powerful, and then they would burn it down. And it's essentially, and I know that there's going to be people who hate me for saying this today, but it is the base of the Republican Party. The base of the Republican Party nor has it been for some time, about, hey, man, we're going to come up with a better healthcare plan than you. Or, hey, man, we've got this better immigration plan than you. The Republican Party, what fuels them is, don't let them get ahead of you. You don't want them getting ahead of you, do you? These Mexicans or these Black people. So it's not about, we've got a better plan than you. It's, you don't want, the Republicans, don't take my word for it. Google what the Republican platform was for 2020. They didn't have one. They literally didn't even offer their voters anything. But you don't want them to get nothing, do you?
Immigration was
yes.
way up there.
Yes.
On up.
Don't let them in here. If they do, what will you have left? Don't you want that white skin to matter? So, I mean, it's always been about different groups bubbling, but our groups bubbling, they changed the laws. Now they're trying to change the voting rules. So it's always this shell game. Don't let them go to school. Do you know what I mean? Where there were fights in America, don't let them rise, because what will you have, white guy? Who will you be when this nigga is better than you? And there you had the backlash from Barack coming into the White House. And then you get some guy who's credibly accused of violating at least 30 white women. You know what I mean? Who shows up with on his third baby mama who can't speak English. And there was a lot of white people who said, well, shit, at least he's not Black. For a woman, you know what I mean? Where now they're willing to accept the lowest common denominator. You got a guy who ran for president who stood on stage 2 nights ago and said that he was willing to pardon people who tried to overthrow the government. Can you?
Yeah, I saw a guy making a commentary on that, and he was like, you know, he could have pardoned him on the 7th or the 8th.
Yeah. Like,
can
you imagine me and OT and a bunch of us running at the Capitol and beating cops to death?
No.
It would have been a bloodbath.
Right.
So over time, this country has always been, there's been a percentage of people who've always been like, well, just don't let them, not about, hey, let's uplift or let's whoever the best should get the job. Yeah, whoever's the best should get the job, long as it ain't one of them.
But the ironic part is, the jobs, as far as immigration goes and all that, they're taking the jobs that nobody else wants. So what are you mad about?
The last time in the South, they really had a roundup and threw the immigrants out. It was a fish gutting and cleaning factory. So they round up the immigrants, they throw them out. The factory closed.
Because they didn't have it. Nobody wanted to do the jobs.
None of those young white guys in that area were willing to do anything remotely close to that hard work, and damn sure not at that pay. So I had, again, studying all that, having all of that knowledge, and people always want to have the tough conversation till it's time to have the tough conversation, right? Then they get mad about it. Noam hates debating with me. Sometimes he gets so mad his head almost explodes, but he always does say, well, Jon does come with facts. He's not just making shit up. All of it is historically correct, right? So having all that in my head, studying, the difference between us and those other groups is you didn't have the Tulsa bombings. You didn't have a Ku Klux Klan for Mexicans. You didn't have a Ku Klux Klan that just went out. They were specifically there to terrorize Black people getting their stuff together financially. There was redlining. We had a president of the United States who would not rent to Black people. Don't take my word for it. The Justice Department of the United States said him and his father were putting colored on applications so that they would not rent to those, would not sell to those people. So there's always been a headwind for Black Americans. This time with BLAP, you can't bomb BLAP.
It's an app. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was trying to find a way. How can we find ways to circulate this dollar? Finally, and I made a phone call to Silicon Valley and said, I'm just going to dig in. I didn't, by the grace of God, let's be fair, wasn't working.
Pandemic. Yep.
It wasn't like I had to turn down a bunch of shows to get this thing done. I was actually sitting around watching fucking Tiger King. So
you're like looking up like
it's like even this dude's got a movie.
Sitting around watching Tiger King, and I said, "Hey man, let me see if I can pull this off." I text my homegirl who used to work for Facebook out in Silicon Valley. Her husband's a little bubbly and says, "You're not going to believe what my wife is working on." And they had dinner guests, and one of the dinner guests said, "Tell them I'll do it. I'll do it for free."
No shit.
Google engineer.
How about that?
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Put it out there in the universe, right?
Married to a Black woman, he's got 2 Black kids, said he was looking for hair care for one of his daughters one time, a therapist for another one of his daughters, and said, I know this guy. This will be my contribution to the movement. I could help this guy get to a proof of concept. He did warn me in the first meeting that we had. He said, listen, man, I'm going to try to go in a different direction from what you've ever seen before. I don't know if this is going to work. But I said, how much would it cost me if I paid someone for a prototype? He said, $40,000. I said, let's see if your way works. Let's see if this free thing works out first.
Step 1, free one.
Yeah.
Step 2.
And then he comes back, he sends me a prototype. I called, I remember sending it to a guy who I consider an advisor. He's been so helpful, my buddy Sean down at New Labs. And Sean was one of the guys who was in early on Airbnb. I sent it to another buddy of mine, Ikram, who created Venmo. And those guys got it. And both of them hit me back within minutes and was like, wow, this is going to be way bigger than you thought. Well, whoever your guy is that tried this other approach, it worked.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And that's kind of when the room got quiet and they were like, yo, man, you got to hand this off now to a development firm. That's going to cost you some money. But if they come up with something that's as simple as this is probably gonna change the way that people spend money, at least in the short term, because it was really simple, didn't require any thought. It's geolocated. And
Right.
And to be honest, I can comfortably say this now, and I've asked other people, historians and whatever, and all of them had said that BLAP is the easiest way to support Black-owned businesses in the 400-year history of America.
It's hard because, most Tulsas don't happen very often. And, we're always like, it's not odd for Chinatown or Little Italy or wherever, for whatever the town is named after, for those people to own the businesses there. But if you go to the Black part of town, like in D.C. where I grew up, the pizza shop, which is Italian food, was owned by the Koreans. It still is.
Right.
In Southeast Washington. It just was like, I don't remember seeing Black people owning most of the businesses in our neighborhood. It was always other groups. So the dollar, even if it circulated the neighborhood, went out to the other communities that actually owned it. It didn't stay there before it left. And what is it? It's supposed to stay. It's supposed to circulate 6 times or something before it leaves. Is that the rule? I forget what it is.
I think that there's probably a healthy level of circulation, but in addition to the businesses not being set up, but we also saw that during this COVID situation. A lot of people don't know that nearly half of Black-owned businesses went under permanently during this time, and a big piece of that was the same as it's been since the beginning of time. We don't have the same access to capital. So when things start getting rocky, we don't have a banker on a first name basis that we could call. Do you know what I mean? Or let's say right after World War II, when the middle class of America was built up with those GI loans that were coming from the bank, we didn't have access to those. You know what I mean? We weren't able to come back from the war and then walk into the bank. Hey, Jimmy's home. And here, take this money for this cheap house, which is how Donald Trump's father made his money in Queens. Those small, whatever houses, the GI people were coming back that they were selling. That's where the Trump business came from. Wow. So we didn't have access to that. And then when we tried to move into Trump Tower, they put C's on the application. Those of us who had money. In Chicago, they redlined districts where they wouldn't give us loans. If they want to move here, don't give them a loan. Wow. And over decades and centuries, that adds up to a hell of a headwind and a unique problem that requires a unique solution.
That's right. Over the pandemic, I opened an account at a Black-owned bank, and I was like, because that's another crucial part, the banking part. Like you say, you can't go into a bank and them give you the time of day.
Where'd you open
the real one? It was I think it's all online right now. One United Bank, I think it's called.
Oh, okay. Black banks. I'm at Carver Federal Savings, Black-owned bank. Yeah.
Nice. Is that in New York?
Yeah, it's in New York. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a crucial component. You gotta vote with your dollars.
Yo, let me tell you something. You got to be patient with Black-owned banks too, because there's some that you niggas, you niggas need to get it together. You got to be patient with these niggas. Oh my God. But you got to do what we got to do.
Well, learning about money is something that's, my parents never had a lot of money, so like if you don't come from having a lot of money, you don't know what to do with money when you get it. Like
financial literacy is critical. My brother right now trades every morning, owns I think 3 properties, but yeah, we didn't learn that from my parents. Now his kids obviously will be financially literate. They'll understand the stock market. He's in this goddamn blockchain stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He owns 3 houses, so he can pass that down. But yeah, there were no earlier generations of ours that would be able to pass down any financial literacy because They were just trying to keep their heads above water.
Well, that's such a big thing when you're trying to like change these big tides because, you know, financial literacy is a big, you know, it's like, wow, do I want this pair of sneakers? It's like, wow, sneakers are $300? Really? A $300 sneaker? Let me see. No. You know? Now, maybe if you have one pair, if that's your birthday present or whatever, but you know what I mean? Like, what matters to you? How do you delegate what's more important, the hierarchies of all that, you know? It's tough.
Yeah, and even like looking back at like I think we've talked about this in the past where it's like you're presented this reality and then that just becomes your truth, you know what I mean? And it's like when I was in high school, we would have assemblies where student loan companies would come to the schools and say, "Here are the charts. If you don't go to college, this is where you're going to end up. This is the income that you're going to be like capped at. Here's that, like, and if you can't afford it, don't worry, we're here. We've got you." And then you signed away the next 30 years of income for your student loans. And now you're like, they look at the percentages of people that even use their college degree.
Yeah.
And you're stuck with these payments that like, when you go back and look at it, you're like, you fucking lied to me from the start. Like, I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to own a landscaping company, but you scared the shit out of me and I had to go to school. And then when you go to school, the minute you get on campus in the quads or whatever, it's like sign up for this MasterCard and you get 3 free Bob Marley posters or a Blacklight Cypress Hill poster or whatever the fuck. And you're like, whatever. And you sign up for a credit card and now you're 19, 20 years old and you've got debt waiting for you when you get out. And you've got new debt for, yeah, I'll buy kegs. I'll buy pizza. Fuck it. I got this credit card that came with the t-shirt, you know? And you're screwed. You're literally like, you're 19, 20 years old and you're 5 figures in debt already.
In the law, it should say at every one of those credit card tables, they should have to put somebody who's 32 sitting there telling you what it looks like.
Yeah, yo, man.
Yo.
That's hilarious, dude.
And that's also after they changed the laws and your college costs like 10 times more than it used to.
Yeah, dude. You put your head into it. There you go. Before you sign, you need to spend 30 seconds looking into this box.
Wait. They call it the fine print. Okay, just before you sign, go talk to the fine print.
Go talk to Mr. F Print. Hey, and he's sitting there going, run. He goes, go, run now.
Don't even go to college.
I swear I think that like the whole education system is such like, I mean, you were almost shamed if you didn't go to school right out of high school. When in high school, most people, man, I talked to a friend about this where, you know, I worked full time to pay for rent and tuition and stuff and took classes at night. And when you'd go to the bars and you'd see people getting way hammered and getting kicked out and grabbing people and acting fucked up, it was the kids who had it just handed to them.
Absolutely.
Throughout college. But like the folks that like I had to get up in the morning and cut lawns and then go do, granted I did dumb shit, but I was hungover, you look at it and you're like, some people, a large percentage of this country just isn't ready to grow up yet. Like, go work a couple years, figure out financial literacy is a thing that, I mean, that term is like, that's the most underachieved and overlooked.
How come it's not a course in high school?
Oh
like
my
at
God,
least by
dude.
12th grade, because you're
Middle
about
school.
to go out into the world.
Yeah, man, totally. We never learned anything like that.
Let me tell you, it was decided upon amongst industrial barons back in the day when they had say in the curriculum of public schools.
Yeah.
You're headed for the factory.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you took
and
that test.
They back in the day said, in the event that we give them this financial literacy, they won't work in the factory.
Exactly.
So that's actually a fact that back in the day, the Rockefellers and them had a say in what was to be in public education, and they opted, let's not put that in there because we'll have more and more upheaval.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to be, to be fair, to those guys. I don't think that it was a because people are always like rich people are evil, this, that, the other. When I read it, I honestly didn't think it had malintent. I thought that from the way that they were arguing it, when you read some of it and kind of study it, it was almost like they were like, because you got to keep it contextualized. They were like, if this country is going to rise up to what it needs, we need to get ahead of those guys overseas. Otherwise, they're going to come and stomp us. So when I read it and studied the history, now, of course, people are so rich in the United States, it's such what it was. But that's not what these guys were dealing with.
Yeah.
They were trying to say, hey, man, if we're gonna get out in front of England, we're gonna get out in front of those European countries, we need everybody on the same page right now. Let's not get fancy with it, with all of this, I mean, financial, let's just everybody keep their head down for now so we can become a superpower. I don't think that those guys were saying I know there's some people who will always argue, fuck you, John, you're stupid, they were greedy. I think, of course, there's some greed mixed in there, but I don't think that was what they were thinking. I think that they were thinking, if we don't get to where we need to get, we're just going to be a massive colony of Europe. They'll come over and take this from us if we don't fucking get these bullets made in this factory this afternoon. We don't have time to be arguing about financial fucking literacy right now.
Yeah.
Totally. But part of it is like the age-old question of, at what point do you sell your soul? Because, it's like, well, it's just business. All right, we got to beat England and the foreign powers, so we have to get ahead of them. So sorry, we need slavery right now. It's like it's just business. Yeah. I think there's a lot of it that this is the way it is.
Well, like
and it's just business, and we got to do this to get ahead. And there's always that, biblical bargain you make with the devil.
I'm with you on you can justify the unjustifiable if you want to over and over and over again. When I read that history about whether to put education, it's almost like going back. There were arguments in the Black community back then between Booker T and W.E.B. Du Bois. Du Bois, do we have a talented 10? Take 10% of Black people, get them to the finish line and let them come back and re-educate and say how it was done? Or do we try to educate the masses? So there's always been those type of arguments. But when I read the argument about whether to be focused on financial literacy or do we leave that out so that we can get this society working in what was an industrial society back then? Do we want to have strikes every week because of these super educated, some genius at the end of the line decides he doesn't want to work today and says, we need to focus on financial literacy? Do you want a Bernie in the factory every week, shutting down the factory? And I think if I was those guys, I would say that's going to kill us.
Yeah, but what do you do now when there is no industrial? We have no industrial anything more. And so your only hope of survival is literacy. It is education. Now we're screwed.
Let me ask you this. With that financial literacy that is now accessible at our fingertips, how many of us are taking advantage of it?
But you need education to even think that way. Like, I am so glad and this is, I guess, kind of a confession, because school is so insanely expensive now. I'm thinking about sending Nigel to college if he already knows what he wants to do before then. But I've been educated, even though I didn't go to college, but I went to a really, really great high school. So I have enough to pass to him. Well, actually, he's already ahead of me online. He learns so much so fast. Like, he's just shown me stuff. He's 7, right? So I know that he's going to be okay, and he will avail himself of that because he does know from 4 years old that it's at his fingertips. But for some people caught in this between era where I literally think right? Me too. I'm still trying to constantly educate myself. Like, I got into nursing, where you always are in school.
Well, and, dude, imagine trying to start a tech company. Imagine my dumb ass trying to start a tech company. So I know what you mean.
You're drawing it in your notebook. You're like, here's the computer, here's
Dude,
the phone.
let me tell you something.
Dude.
Let me tell you something. A lot of YouTube went into this company.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're all like.
And that's the thing that like you look at it now, and I'm watching videos of. I have no financial literacy, and I'm watching 19-year-old kids on YouTube teach me how to make $100,000 in a year by putting away 5% of this and that, and diversifying. And I'm like, son of a bitch. I mean, I know in high school all I was worried about was doing nitrous and bong hits and drinking beer and shit, and it fucked me. But you want to know what's funny is when they came into school. Like earlier, we were talking about like that. Like I think there's also that kind of like trajectory of like if you look at the generation before me or 2 generations before me, the amount of people that went to college significantly lower because they weren't coming in with that fear-based. Like I think I've heard my uncles and parents and shit talk about like when I was in school, the kids who went to school were the ones who knew they wanted to be a doctor, knew they wanted to be a nurse, knew they wanted to be a lawyer or whatever. Like no one went to school for liberal arts kind of unless your parents were loaded and shit. You went out and you started, you got a job and you learned a trade, whatever. And I think about some of the, like the folks that I went to school with where we were all looking at them going like, how are you not falling? How are you not going to school? You're just going to go be a sheet metal worker or an HVAC worker. And they were like, I know I'm not cut out for this bullshit. I hate school now. And then I get out 5 years later with a fucking English degree. What the hell's that shit? Yeah. And then they're like, I'm buying a house. I've got X amount saved up. They learned what financial literacy was. And I'm like, teach me, dude. Like you're the smartest one out of all of us and you didn't take a fucking class. Yeah. You're learning life.
You have a couple kids that'll teach you financial.
Man, it's just, I mean, hopefully I'm looking at like, do I move back home? And they're like, you know, like, I'm like, can I rent the basement of the house you just bought? And I thought you were the idiot, you know? But it's that whole perception operating from fear. And that's that's the whole throughput of this whole fucking thing. It's just like, it's all fear-based. If you don't do X, then Y. If you don't go to college, if you don't go to grad school. When I graduated from undergrad, they were already with the rhetoric that undergrad was basically equivalent to a high school diploma. Yeah. So you might as well just go right to grad school. And I'm like, all right. They were making
so much money off it at that point. Like I remember someone responding to one of these boomers that was talking about how lazy kids were. And they were like, go F yourself. What did college cost when you went? What's your debt? You know what mine is, dude? Kiss my ass, you know? Insane, and there's nothing here for me. You got a job with your degree and bought your house and had your 2.3 kids and your whatever. Like, what did I have? You know, I can't do nothing with this. And I have like an insane amount of debt. So, you know.
I've had conversations with my student loan company where they're like, if you lower your payments, you won't even be paying the interest. I'm just like, fuck.
That's cool, like, man. Wow.
Like, what year are you? What year does it seem like I'll be paying this off till? And they tell me the year, and I'm going to be like, I'm probably going to be dead by then. Yeah. I just want to let you know. But it's it was literally like it was a smoke and mirrors trick that they pulled on us when I was in high school, and it was just like, you got to go to school.
You know what? In your defense, Mike, when you write your best-selling book, after it's on the New York Times, I'll be like, okay, your English degree did help a little bit, right?
I sure hope so.
It's just a game of finances. I was really fortunate to dodge that bullet because of basketball. So, you know, I had a full scholarship.
I don't know if you've seen how tall I am, John, but no basketball teams were knocking down my door.
In all fairness, I hated basketball. I wanted to play. I did.
If Bud Light was giving out scholarships, I would have went to fucking Yale for free.
If they had keg scholarship,
I could do a 20-foot bong hit in 2 pulls. Does that pay for anything?
Oh my God! No.
How many of the guys on your team though were majoring in economics?
You know what? The truth of the matter is, the spectrum of athletes was very wide.
Good.
So there was a guy named Ernest Nzigamazabo that I played with. He was I want to say a physicist. His major was
Damn.
This guy was brilliant. So I had guys like that. My buddy Bob Martin, really, really smart. These guys were on their way to law school and med school, and they were ball players. So it very much varied.
So they were kind of like you, like, I'm gonna let this basketball take care of this med school degree or this.
It's fantastic.
Like, that's a lot of money.
We all thought we were going to the NBA.
Yeah.
We all thought we were going to the NBA, but yeah, man. So it was I don't know, it was the spectrum of what we were there studying as ball players. But fortunately, it was going to be paid for, so we weren't going to be stuck with any student debt. And like I said, basketball, man, my mom forced me to play ball. I was not interested in playing basketball. Like I said, I wanted to play football. We didn't have enough money for the pads, and then I wanted to skate. We didn't have a car, so the skate lessons were too far. So my mom was like, hey, I went to Woolworths. I got you this basketball. You can play basketball. And then she said, sign up for a basketball team. You know, you'll get better, whatever. I signed up for this team, right? I hate basketball. So practice is 2 days a week. I would leave. I would go hang out with my friends, and then I would come back in with the basketball and make up these tall tales about how basketball practice was. Keep in mind, my mom has 3 jobs at the time. So my mom worked a 40-hour-a-week job and then a part-time job after that job. So 8 hours, she worked 12 hours a day, and then she had a third job she would work on the weekends.
And a full-time mother.
So she could never come to these Saturday games. So one Saturday, probably like 4 months in to the season, my mom says, hey, I don't have to work on Saturday. I can come to your game. Keep in mind, I've never been to practice. Never. I have been going to hang with my friends, right? So imagine the look on my face. I was like, oh, great, right?
You sure you don't have to work?
Right.
Don't you want a fifth job?
So I go to the gym. Keep in mind, people don't think of the hood, but I'm from the part of Denver that's not on the brochure. Mike, you lived there. I'm from the 5 Points when the 5 Points was
Yeah.
And now, like when I grew up there, it was far, far worse. Where I grew up, as a matter of fact, they bulldozed Cabrini Green. They bulldozed the projects in The Wire. So America was doing that with their worst areas at one point in time. So the neighborhood I grew up in, they bulldozed it. Denver was like, we're going to pretend that didn't happen. All those drive-bys, those killings, those shootings, right? So it's a hood basketball situation in the hood anyway. Our coach was an alcoholic, so he didn't really know who was on the team. He used to be drunk as shit. He used to be drunk as shit at the games. So I go to the game, right? Some of my friends were on the team, and I was like, I'm in a bind, you guys. Y'all got to help me out. And they was like, John, don't worry about it. He just calls out the numbers in the locker room. As long as there's not 15 people at the game, because every week they was like one player couldn't make it for whatever reasons. It's like, as long as all 15 guys don't show up, when he gets to the end, just raise your hand. So we get in the locker room, 12, that's mine. 13, that's mine. I'm like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. 14, that's mine. 15, that's mine. And I take the basketball jersey and put it on as fast as hell. I put it on so goddamn fast it was on backwards.
Put it on for the first time.
Pulling the tags off it.
Yeah. So now I'm on the bench. I'm like, woo, and my mom's sitting across the gym. I think I got in at the end of the game and kicked the ball out of bounds 2 or 3 times. But the crazy thing was, I was so terrified that I didn't know when she could come back to a game. I was like, fuck it. I got to start going to practice.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I became, I got pretty good at it because I'm competitive.
Dude, what a classic Afro-American story for Black History Month. No, seriously, like from hood basketball to full scholarship to majoring in economics to comedy to making it
in
an
the
app.
City. Yeah.
Like it's
how many
like,
people don't make it in the city doing comedy? How many people don't make it how many people don't make it in app development? That's the shit that's like every now and then when you're like beating your head against the wall, you go, how many people aren't doing what I'm doing? You know, and that's fantastic. John, through your app, I learned that some of my favorite places are have black ownership, and I didn't even know it. There's a bookstore in New Haven where I grew up. That's Atticus, black owned. I had no idea, and maybe it was just me not paying attention. But I'm like, shit, wow, that's unbelievable. I love the app's fantastic, and it's intuitive and it's easy, and it like couldn't be a more like at your fingertips like experience. You know.
I told my guys when we first started, if it wasn't going to be simple, let's not do it, because people are willing to help. You know, people are like, hey, man, I get it, man. I know that black people have had a little rougher go. I'm willing to help, but you got to help me help you. Don't make it difficult for me to help your ass.
Yeah. And we're just a generation of infants where if it's not this easy.
Yes.
If it's not that fucking easy.
Yes.
I don't want any part of it.
And that's what
even if it makes my life better.
And that's what I required, though, of my developers. I was like, it needs to be one touch, because if we make it any more difficult, or someone's got to try to figure something out, they're going to be like, yeah, I get it, but I just couldn't figure it out. It's got to be one touch. We have to make this thing as easy as possible. Now I'm asking everybody, man, because no one gives a fuck where they buy their shit. I'm asking everybody, man, during Black History Month, do me a favor and just get you're going to buy flowers for Valentine's Day, right? And we never know where we get this shit from. Use BLAP to buy your flowers for Valentine's. There's florists on there. So just get your flowers. You know what I mean? That's an easy fucking ask for the month of February. Yeah. You don't got to do anything. Right. Buy flowers for Valentine's Day through BLAP. That's an easy one touch. Florist. Bam, bam, order them, keep it moving.
So the app is BLAP. It's on it's on iOS and Android and everything. You can find it on any device.
It cost me a lot of money to get it up on Android at the same time.
Let's hope it pays back.
Can I get those sweatshirts?
Oh yeah, you know what? Yeah.
All right now.
In the merch store. I'm actually marking the merch down for Black History Month too. Yeah, I'm marking the merch down. So just going to the merch store, you can get BLAP sweatshirts, cups. You know what I mean? You can get a goddamn phone saver. You get a phone case. Yeah, there's all types. There's hats. There's all types of goofy shit on there. But,
we'll put all that stuff in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Thank you so much for hanging out and congratulations. And it's just this is fantastic, dude. I'm
thanks for having me.
Thrilled to have you on.
This was
Kill it tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited.
You gotta get that set ready. Oteil came to see me do a show there, and these two girls were talking in the front, and you'll love this. I go, ladies, because you learn after a while, right, John? You don't go, shut the fuck up. You don't yell. You go, you kill them with kindness, and you go, ladies, I'm sorry, but I can hear you talking, and it's kind of throwing me off a little bit. So if you wouldn't mind, And the rest of the crowd was like, okay, And they go, oh, no, we're not talking. And then they go right back to talking, and I'm like, no, you're totally talking. And a girl from the other side of the room goes, no, you're talking, and we all hear you, and you're ruining it. And they go, you mean we can't talk to each other? And I'm like, no, that's talking. And they go, forget it, we're leaving. And they walk up on the stage, and they try to walk out of the showroom. And one of them had heels, like, remember Oteil? Like this big. And she stepped off the stage, and her ankle was like, yoink, like this. And I was like, uh-oh. And when everybody was like, goodbye, see you later. And they just left. And then we got on with the show, but it was just another night of comedy. Just living your dream is a nightmare.
Yes. Well, like you said, there's some people that's probably their first comedy show.
It's their first comedy show. Now they go, we hate comedy. We can't talk during it. So.
And that's when you wish you were Patrice O'Neal. Right?
Oh,
and you're just like,
Patrice would have let him have it.
Yeah, dude. Lock the doors, he would have said. You're not going anywhere. I'm like, get him out of here as fast as I can.
He would have unloaded on him.
Yeah. Well, Johnny, I love you, bud. And
I love you, Mike. Thank you, man.
Of course. And everybody download BLAP and check out everything Jon Laster. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media.
At He Was Funny. Yes, I am at He Was Funny. That's the easiest place to find me, man. The app has got some dope things coming up, man. So I hope people jump on there. We're going to have workouts, yoga, should be comedy shows on there pretty soon. There'll be Sunday church service, man. It's coming together.
Fantastic.
Wow, nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
dude.
we're gonna have Blap Live premiering in the next couple of days. So it's about to heat up.
Right
Wow,
on, dude.
Awesome. Thank
Thank you,
man.
John. Thanks everyone for listening. See you next time.